Yo, how's everybody doing? I hope you're all doing well. I hope you all had a great game week. It's been a good week of football, I think, from a fantasy perspective, especially compared to last week, which was bad. This one was really, really good from a fantasy perspective, and also in general. Football outside the Premier League was also very nice. We had some good games in La Liga as well. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take you through this game week and review it. Then I'm gonna look at my team. I have a few comments as well on the games of this week in the Premier League, and from there we'll look at my team. Then we'll look at potential transfers on my watch list, and then we'll preview the next game week before we move on to captaincy options. My voice is a bit, my sinus is still a little bit blocked, so I'm feeling a bit more energetic than last week, but I still sound a little bit nasal, so hopefully that doesn't come out too much in the video. Let's start over here. Before I do that, actually, just one thing. Make sure if you like this video to hit the subscribe button, and to don't forget to like this video. I'd appreciate it a lot. So let's get going. Let's look at the fixtures here. Let's see what happened this week. On Saturday, we had Crystal Palace versus Fulham, 0-0. Not much to say there from a fantasy perspective. We got Luton 1 versus Wolves. I kind of promoted this match as a go-to last week, and I said if you want to target the fixtures against Luton, go for someone from Wolves and go for Pedro Neto. And he ended up scoring. He ended up scoring a very nice goal, actually. If you want to catch that on the highlights, it's a nice goal. So that was good, though I wouldn't want any Wolves players on my team after that. Third is Man City versus Nottingham Forest. That was 2-0. It ended up being kind of a feisty game, and I'm not really sure why that happened, but we got a goal from Foden and we got a goal from Haaland. We got a red card to Rodri, so unlucky there if you have him in your team, and also a bit unlucky for Alvarez owners, me included, because I think like when a team like Man City gets a red card, or whoever it might be, actually just changes the whole way that game is going. And so basically Alvarez became less of a threat. He got subbed off earlier than the 60th minute, which is not good at all. Whereas before that, actually he had some good chances and he might have scored. So there was that, but they ended up holding on to the clean sheet, and I think after the red card they were just holding on to make sure they don't lose control of that match. So, if you have Alvarez in your team, I wouldn't worry at all. If you have Foden in your team, then good on you for holding on to him for this long, because he got a good goal over there, and unlucky if you sold him. Afterwards, we've got Brentford 1, Everton 3. I watched the highlights for that game. It seemed like Everton did really well, actually. And most of the highlights were from them. And it seemed like, Brentford didn't have a hold on this match. They had one highlight, I think, which they scored from. And it looked like they were overpowered by Everton somehow. Everton, who got their first win of the season so far. We got Burnley 0, Man United 1. That was also a game where I was kind of saying that Man United are in a bit of a crisis right now. They're not in a good situation. I predicted that they'll have a big fall against Bayern Munich in the Champions League. It could have been much worse. They ended up actually putting on a good show, putting on a good fight, and they ended up losing 4-3 only. I predicted that Bayern were probably going to smash them, but 4-3 is a respectable scoreline. Burnley started off this match doing well. They hit the post in the beginning of it, and it looked like they might subject Man United to more bad times. But Bruno Fernandes scored an amazing goal. Really, really nice first touch volley. Brilliant. So good on you if you own Bruno Fernandes and you've stayed patient with him. Rashford did not do that much in this match, and that might make a lot of people look at potentially selling him. Next day on Sunday, Arsenal 2, Spurs 2. That was a really good game from an FPL perspective, and a good game in general, actually. Son got 2 goals, both assisted by Maddison. There was a bit of an injury scare for Maddison, and Arsenal got a goal and an assist from Saka. Who was the second goal from for Arsenal? It was an own goal from Romero. Really unlucky if you had him in your team. But yeah, he got an own goal over there. Some of my mini league rivals had him. One of them had him as a sub, and he didn't come on. Some of them actually had him in their starting lineup. So unlucky on that. He had a really, really bad game, actually. He had that own goal, and then the penalty for Arsenal was a result of him. So not a good game for Romero. Odegaard kind of disappeared in this match as well. He got a yellow card. That kind of justifies me selling him a few weeks ago for Son. That kind of paid off right now because Son got those 2 goals while Odegaard did nothing. Next, we've got Brighton 3, Bournemouth 1. Brighton are looking like an amazing FPL asset. They're 3rd in the league right now. Or just a great FPL team in general. Excuse me, I gotta get that. Yeah, so Brighton, great team to target from an FPL perspective, but they do have hard fixtures coming up. That being said, though, for this game, Mitoma comes in off the bench. There were some worries about those players starting because Brighton had a late Europa League fixture. And it was rightfully so. Like, the worry was there for a reason. And Mitoma ended up getting benched, but luckily for whoever owns him, including me, he came off the bench and he scored. He came off the bench in the second half and he scored in what was potentially his first attack. He was just on the pitch for like a minute and he scored a goal and he looked great. And then he scored another goal later in the match. So that was awesome. Really, really good stuff from Mitoma. Chelsea versus Aston Villa. I watched the highlights for that. Funnily enough, it's very frustrating to own Chelsea assets right now. But funnily enough, I was watching the highlights, and this is not going to be me trying to tempt you into getting or keeping Chelsea players whatsoever. You're completely in the right if you want to sell them and get rid of them in any way possible. But they looked good. Like, I mean, they had a few chances to score in this game, and that might be the case for them in every game, but the results don't show it, and it's not translating to anything from an FPL perspective. So I wouldn't blame you for selling them. But in the highlights, Chilwell had a full-on one-on-one chance, and he missed it. And same for Sterling as well. If you have him, he had a one-on-one chance. He shouldn't have missed that, but he did. And that's why we end up with this. Chilwell, again, being very frustrating. Coming in the final 20 minutes, missing that chance and getting a yellow card, getting 0 points and blocking off all your bench points. So a lot of people right now looking at getting rid of all their Chelsea assets. Just, I don't know what the deal with them is. They've got all that money. They've spent all that money on all these players, but they don't seem to get it going. And their fixtures right now are running out. They've got, I think, 2 more easy fixtures, but I think a lot of people would have lost patience right now. You have Nicholas Jackson as well getting another yellow card, and this guy in 6 matches, he's gotten 5 yellow cards, and now he's suspended for the next match. So if you have him, you'd have to get rid of him now at this point, I think, because by the time he comes back, it's going to be 1 more easy fixture to a guy who's not proven in FPL, who's not given you any reason to keep him so far, and for a team that's not firing at all. Aston Villa got that 1 goal and from Watkins, so good on you if you've kept him in your team so far. Liverpool 3, West Ham 1. West Ham, what will I say here? Salah looked much better in this match. Liverpool's defense, a lot of question marks on their defense. If you look at Bowen's goal during that match, and Van Dijk, who was supposed to be marking him and just standing there, and Bowen going around him and like headering the ball into the goal, that's not a good look for a defense, right? And that's not a good look for someone who's the leader of your defense in Van Dijk. He seems to be a shadow of his former self. So their defense is not looking very good, but they're still winning those matches. They're still on that winning streak, and Salah has looked much better. He scored a goal, and he was generally just playing very well during that match. So he's someone I think a lot of people are just shuffling their teams around or looking at potentially getting Salah in. As for West Ham, I think they also have easier fixtures coming up soon, so they might be someone you could potentially target. Kufal over there is on my watch list, but I'll get to that later. Last but not least, Newcastle 8-0 against Sheffield United. This was one of those matches where I was kind of hoping that Newcastle don't do so much because they had mini league rivals in head-to-head who had Newcastle players on their pitch. Unfortunately, I didn't have any. But yeah, they ran riot. In the beginning, it looked like it might be a bit of a contest. Sheffield United were looking a bit threatening, but then Newcastle scored about 3 in about 10 minutes, I think, in the first half, and they never looked back from there. They just annihilated Sheffield United. If you had any Newcastle players, any of the 8 players here who gave returns, especially if you had one of their defenders, the Trippier, Botman, Byrne, good on you. You got a big haul over there, and I think they're definitely a team to target for their upcoming fixtures, given that they're a good team based on last season, and also because their fixtures are super, super easy now. At least in the medium and I think in the long term as well. So let's see. Let's have a look at the Premier League table, right? Just a quick look at this, and I think I'll make a few notes here. Okay, have a look at these 3 teams, these 4 teams, right? You got Luton, Burnley, and Sheffield United. They're kind of interchangeable on who you might want to target. If you're targeting like a fixture, for example, it might be good. Like, I mean, look at that, right? Like, not a single win so far for these 4 teams: Bournemouth, Luton, Burnley, and Sheffield. Not a single win so far. Granted, Luton do have a double game week coming up, but yeah, I mean, if you wanna get into that, do it at your own risk. Just knowing how bad these teams are, so it's kind of like a mismatch. I mean, even look at Brentford over here, right? Like, everyone has Buemo at some point. I had Wissa in my team. I had Buemo and Wissa because of how they started off their season with that win against Fulham, and then they drew against I think they drew against Spurs in the beginning of the season. So it looked like a legit contender, or at least to make a good showing of themselves. But yeah, nothing. Nothing, at least in the past few game weeks, and all these, it must be very, very disappointing to own Buemo or Wissa in the past, or just for Brentford assets in the past few weeks, which were supposed to be easy fixtures. So you got Crystal Palace at home, you had Bournemouth at home, Newcastle away is a bit hard, but then you also had Everton. That was supposed to be an easy fixture for them, but unfortunately they didn't do anything with that. Everton got their first win, as mentioned. Wolves, the reason I mentioned, you shouldn't target their fixtures is because, look at that, they're 16th in the table. I wouldn't target any of their players. Chelsea's somehow in this pack, bottom half of the table right here, where all teams are in the negative goal difference, just all doing awful. So yeah, that covers that, I think, for this. I'll have a look at my team now. So Pickford is someone in my team who every week he just nags at me, but he nags at me because he just hasn't provided anything, right? His next fixture, though, is against Luton, one of those teams that I was just talking about earlier, and his next one is against Bournemouth. So easy fixtures. Hopefully, Everton pick up some kind of form, and that can translate to something for Pickford, because he hasn't done anything so far. In the first 6 weeks, 2-0, 2-1, 3-2, nothing from him. And yeah, that 3, which is kind of a mid-return, was against Arsenal when no one would want him in their team before that match. But yeah, I still don't want to sell him because I just think there's more exciting moves elsewhere. And Calvert-Lewin had a few minutes in the Everton versus Brentford game, and hopefully they look like a much better team and they can make something out of that victory in their next 2 easy fixtures. And who knows, perhaps I'll sell him if I didn't have any other issues in my team, but unfortunately I do. Until then, I'll have to just settle with Pickford and just be happy with whatever he might get me. Gabriel, 1 point. I wasn't really expecting much there. Kind of took that risk just putting him in. I kind of predicted it was more likely for Gabriel to get points than Udogie in that match, and I was right, but only by 1 point. And Yeah, I just figured it'll be more likely that Arsenal win this with a clean sheet than Tottenham, but not based on too much anyway. That's it's usually a high scoring fixture, but it's usually a fixture that it's either a draw or Arsenal win. So the likelihood for Tottenham winning it was based on the last times that these two teams have played together has been in favor of Arsenal. And that's why I picked Gabriel there. But yeah, 1 point. Didn't really expect much there. Chilwell, 0 points. Rubbish, just like last week. Nothing comes out of him, and yeah, he's a red flag in my team right now. Not starting again is not cool. Um, yeah, I need to find a replacement for Chilwell. There were some talks of him potentially starting in the next match, but there's so many things going against him being an FPL asset right now that I'm kind of tired of it. I don't have the patience to deal with Chilwell at that price in my team right now, or deal with or gambling. Like I don't have the patience to gamble on Chelsea actually doing good, which is something that they've been far from in the Premier League. Stupinan, yeah, he didn't keep a clean sheet, but he got the points from that one assist that he gave to Mitoma, so still a very good asset. Hard fixtures coming up, but yeah, I'd say Chilwell is more of a target than a Stupinan right now. Yeah, Son. What I said about Son in the last video still holds true, and I'm glad he justified what I said with that performance. He's a big game player. He's I don't want to say fixture proof, but he's close to it. Right? He had you had Arsenal going all out, and then Tottenham kind of trying to hit them on the break. And he's your guy for that. He's the guy for the big occasions, and he's a big game player. And he plays against Liverpool next, and Liverpool with that shaky defense, I would not be surprised at all to see Son scoring again. Yeah, I think he's a good keep so far. I know Salah has a very good prospect right now, but like let's say I go from Son to Salah, which I think maybe no, I can't do. I need two moves to get to him because I don't have enough money. But anyways, like Salah is still playing against Tottenham, and he's gonna be playing against Tottenham away. So it's kind of like a sideways move if I go from Son to Salah right now, especially given that I think he might score. I think there's like I don't want to jinx it, but there's given that how bad that Liverpool defense looked and how good Tottenham have looked recently, they played very well against Arsenal. I think they put on a very good showing. They did not have control of the match in the beginning of it, but then they grew more control. Like they grew as the match went along, and yeah, he was taken off a bit early. I think if he stayed on, he might have been more of a threat and potentially, who knows, scored a third or assisted or something. But he's good. He's justified it so far. I think he might, given the fact that he scored 2 in this match and he scored 3, it's kind of making me lean more towards Son being a very good FPL asset, hopefully in the long term as well. Mitoma I already talked about. Mbuemo, I mentioned him earlier. He might be a potential yellow flag for me right now because of how bad Brentford are doing. Saka, great. I think everyone has him in this team at this point. Not worth talking about so much, but I wouldn't sell him for whatever reason here unless he gets an injury. Rashford not very good in the last match, but they've got Crystal Palace next, so I wouldn't worry so much. Man United not looking that good, but he could easily score next week. It's kind of a 50-50 with him and Bruno at this point. I think last week Bruno was looking like a horrible asset, and it was Bruno that everyone wanted to sell, and now it's potentially Rashford, but I wouldn't want to sell him just yet, especially with these good fixtures coming up. I might look at someone like Maddison, for example, but I think it's also a sideways move given that Maddison has, Maddison had a bit of an injury concern in the last match, so hopefully he doesn't miss out on anything. And yeah, he has a tougher fixture coming up against Liverpool, whereas Rashford has got Crystal Palace at home. On paper, at least, Man United should maybe score a goal, and he's there to do that. Haaland, as usual, delivering the goods. Everyone probably captained him last week, and he got a return, so that was great. Alvarez, very, very unlucky. Like I said, on another week, that could have been a good haul for Alvarez. and it was a really good fixture in hindsight. Like in looking back at it, there's no one can fault you at all for getting Alvarez in your team. And let's look at Man City's fixtures. They've got Wolves away next. Wolves who are not in good form at all. They've got Arsenal away, which is a good fixture for Man City given the history of that fixture. Man City are always demolishing Arsenal. Sorry if you're an Arsenal fan, but I wouldn't look at this as a fixture to stay away from Man City, because they're, as a team, fixture proof, because they're, at least on paper, the best team in the Premier League. And I can see Alvarez. I think it was a one-off where he got subbed off in that match because of the circumstances of it. And I think he could score again against Arsenal coming up. So I wouldn't worry at all. Just a bad week, hopefully. At least we don't have enough evidence right now to worry about Alvarez. Udogie on the bench, 0 points, nothing from him. And I had Kabori. Actually, I thought of subbing in Kabori for Gabriel for this one game week, because he had an easier fixture on paper. So he had, what was it? Sorry. What was it? Yeah, he had Wolves. He had Wolves at home, which is technically a good fixture. But then look at his history, right? 2-1-1-1. So do my faith, I weighed them both against each other. Like, do I have more faith in Kabori getting a return versus Gabriel potentially getting a return, even if it was against Tottenham? I opted for Gabriel, and lo and behold, Kabori gets his first return of the season with 5 points against Wolves. That being said, though, he'll probably start the next game week for me, because they've got a double game week. That covers it for that. Let me have a look at potential transfers and my watch lists. I've got those right here. Now, here's the thing, right? I've already done one transfer. I already went for Trippier. It's not very characteristic of the way I normally play this game, but I think it was a mix of a bunch of things. First of all, Chilwell just being very, very frustrating. And so it's maybe a little bit knee-jerky, but at the same time, I did mention last week that Trippier is a great asset. He was on my watch list last week. He was one of the players that I was talking about potentially doing really well. And he looked really, really good. And and his upcoming fixtures are really, really good. So kind of knee-jerky, but not really, because he's a good long-term pick. I was also anticipating that everyone would be doing this transfer. I was anticipating that Chilwell would be decreasing in price, and Trippier would potentially be going up in price, because that was the standout fixture. 8-0, with Trippier getting 3 assists. Everyone will probably be going crazy to get him, and everyone will be going crazy to sell Chilwell. So I kind of wanted to skip that, so I took the risk and made the transfer very fast before I lose some money on it. So there is a risk there, because they do play in the EFL Cup. They play against Man City, actually, in the EFL Cup in midweek. I just have to hope that nothing happens to Trippier, or hopefully he gets benched for that match. He doesn't play at all. They don't take that competition seriously. They've got a lot of games coming up. They're in the Champions League as well. So I'm just hoping that what's his name? I forgot the Newcastle manager's name. I hope he subs him. I need to get his name. Newcastle manager. Yeah, Eddie Howe. Sorry, Eddie Howe. I hope Eddie Howe benches him for that game. Right. For the game against Man City, and hopefully he can come back. And his next fixture is against Burnley at home, which is a great fixture. Burnley, or the way I look at them, is that type of team that has come up from the Championship. They've got Vincent Kompany as a manager. They played exciting attacking football in the Championship, and now it seems like they're still going with that, and their defense is suffering for it. Their defense hasn't looked really good at all. I remember in the Man City game where it's just like those easy goals being conceded. So these seem like that type of naive team that maybe they're trying something that worked out in the Championship and is not working at all in the Premier League. And so unfortunately, they're losing a lot of their matches, and they're in the last 3 places in the Premier League, and they look like a fixture to target. And Newcastle, given their bounce back from this match, is a great team to just take advantage of those teams that are too naive or that have weak defenses. So I could see this, being a game where Burnley might attack them, maybe might make a bit of a threat. They might sneak in a goal, which would be like, a bad luck for Newcastle owners. But at the same time, I can't go wrong. Like this is on paper the easiest fixture that Trippier could have. That and against Luton, who I think they'll have later in the season. Okay, so that covers it for Trippier. Let's look at the rest of this watch list. Botman, another cheaper option for Newcastle defenders. He's good as well if you want to look at him and you don't have the funds to get Trippier. Botman is a good one. He's up there on corners, so he could potentially get you a corner goal like what he did yesterday. You've got Cash here from Aston Villa. He's a good attacking right back, and Aston Villa is a good team. They've got a good manager, and they've got exciting fixtures coming up. So I'll just have a look at this. Look at all the green over here. Got one hard fixture coming up, which is versus Brighton at home. That's not really a fixture to target, but then afterwards they've got a lot of these good ones. West Ham at home is also a little bit tricky, but Cash is a good player. If you don't want to opt for the Newcastle defenders, if you want maybe a bit more of a differential, you want to hope that Newcastle don't do as well as perhaps Aston Villa, you might opt for Cash because he's got the good fixtures coming up and he's a good player playing for a good team. He's an attacking right back playing for a good team. Madison is a good one as well. He's been good throughout the season. Maybe a bit. He just had 2 matches where he didn't return. So out of 6, he's returned in 4, which is great. It was only that Sheffield United where everyone expected him to do well and he didn't. That was the only bad thing about what he's done so far. But he's a great asset. I would just maybe wait on him to make sure he doesn't have any injury before getting him in. But really good asset. They do play Liverpool next, so there's that caveat. But in general, it looks like all the formula for Spurs for scoring and for doing well seems to be going through Maddison and Son. So in that case, you wouldn't, I wouldn't blame you for going for Maddison there. Perhaps after the Liverpool game, he looks fantastic. If you don't want to, just jump to him right now. After the Liverpool game, he's got Luton away and then Fulham at home and then Crystal Palace away. Chelsea at home as well. That's another easy fixture. So he's looking really good for them. Bowen is also really good for West Ham. Let's look at West Ham's fixtures, right? Because they're also pretty good. They've got Sheffield United at home next. I know. Like we also had Sheffield United at home for looking at Sun last week. They did recently just get demolished 8-0. That can't be good for their morale. Having a West Ham asset, whether it's Bowen or some of the others that I'll get to now, is a good shout. So yeah, Bowen, our boy from last season, who was doing fantastic. He's also looking good this season. Diaby from Aston Villa, he's a good attacking asset, and you don't have to spend. He's maybe if you like at some point, I think everyone's gonna be wanting to get Aston Villa players, in their team. So if you look at game week 10 onwards, they've got Luton at home. Then Forest away, Fulham at home. So this run over here, even if you go up, right, you've got Wolves over here away. And maybe you don't want to go for someone like Watkins, who's a bit more expensive than the other forwards. I think he's at 8 million. And you still want an Aston Villa asset to target their fixtures and their good form. And just in general, they're a good team. Diaby might be your guy. He's owned by 11%. It's not that much. And yeah, he's a good asset. Ward-Prowse is someone that's kind of fallen under the radar, but let's have a look, right? Because he returned in every single match. Since he was bought from West Ham, he didn't play the first match. Second match, third, fourth, and fifth, he returned in every single one of them. He's on free kicks. I believe he takes corners for them. He's playing for a much better team now in West Ham. He used to be for Southampton, and he also used to get returns for them because he used to score a lot of good free kicks. And I think he's on penalties as well. I believe so. So Ward-Prowse, he only didn't return in the last match, but that's against Liverpool. You can't really fault him for that. So Ward-Prowse is there, 6.2 million. That range between 6 to 7 million is just where all the midfielders seem to be, where all the really good midfielders seem to be. So a lot of good picks are there. Yeah, and I mean Salah is not here. But he should definitely be on my watch list. Let's have a look at Salah. Let's talk about him for a little bit. Okay, so Salah returned again. He's looking really, really good. They've got Spurs away next, and they've got Brighton away next. But Salah, I think, is... look, it's hard to get him into your team. I would want him in my team right now because he seems to be a consistent guy, and that's kind of something that we want right now in our teams, given how all the guys seem to be a bit flaky. Salah is a guy who hasn't been flaky. So 10, 10, 8, 5, 5, 5. That's a return in every single match. But the problem with him is how much he costs, as I mentioned earlier. You'd have to shuffle your team. You'd have to make a lot of hard moves to get him in. That being said, where he looks like he's a real must-have is after game week, is on game week 9. Sorry, they start with Everton at home. At that point, I think everyone is going to be hauling to bring him in. That's one trend to look to. It's like that game week 9 and game week 10 for those Liverpool, Aston Villa, and West Ham assets is looking really, really good. That's a point where I think we might see a shift in the fixtures, and you might be targeting those teams instead of what we're targeting right now. With Man City will start to get harder fixtures, and I think Arsenal as well will start to get harder fixtures. We'll look into that, but I think if you can get Salah in your team, that's not a bad shout at all. He's fantastic. And if you can't, you just have to look at what you can do in your team, who could potentially make up for those points. Because otherwise you would just look at, a -4 or -8 or a wild card or whatnot. So the problem with those is that if you want to do a -4, then you'd have to calculate the risk there, right? It's like, do you wait for 2 weeks and potentially wild card, 2 or 3 weeks and then wild card, or do you take a -4? For example, in my case, I'd have to sell Son, who's a really good asset, and sacrifice his returns, and then sell one of these other midfielders, maybe Buemo. I guess he's the worst out of these 4. So you'd have to sacrifice their returns and also sacrifice a -4, potentially a -8. And then will Salah's returns make up for all of that? You'd have to weigh those two against each other and see, or is it better to just hold on and hope that your assets who are good would get those numbers, and wild card or kind of work towards them now. I think I kind of eliminated getting Salah into my team easily when I got Trippier because he's more expensive than Chilwell, and now I only have 1.4 million in the bank. So it'll be hard for me to get Salah, but I'm banking on the rest of my team, or I'm banking on the rest of my team making up for him not being there. Hopefully that should be the case. Back to the watch list. Okay, so we've got Darwin Núñez. He scored a fantastic goal. He played 80 minutes in the last match. He's still a bit of a rotation risk, but that was a really, really good goal. I'd eye his minutes from now on. I wouldn't try to get him in immediately. Morris, and the reason he plays for Luton, right? And they've got a double game week fixture coming up and it's a really good double as well. They've got Everton away and they've got Burnley at home. There's no better game week that you could potentially ask for, but there are better players that you can ask for. And this just has trap written all over it because he plays for Luton. And I just remember what happened last season with Dennis for Watford, and he had that double game week, and everyone was hauling to get him in. Like everyone was just like shuffling to get him in. That easy double game week on paper, and then he gets a red card in the first match. So this is sort of a similar situation, and the trap is set, right? He scored a goal against Wolves, as if the FPL gods are just trying to tempt you to get him. And so yeah, I look, you can go with him. It's not a bad pick at all if you want some sort of differential. You want to try to get an advantage in some way. He seems to be their guy for goal scoring. He's scored like what? How many goals? Yeah, 1 goal against Brighton beginning of the season, and then 1 goal against Wolves. He got the penalty and he scored that. But do so at your own risk. He's playing against Everton and Burnley, who are... Everton might have a bounce from that match that they just had, which was really good against Brentford. And Burnley is I'd say they're at least Luton's match. They played against them in the Championship, and Burnley was, I think, first. And Burnley are their attacking style of play might work against a team like Luton, who's the worst, I think, in this league, or one of the worst. So yeah, Morris is not a bad pick, but do so at your own risk. And don't say I didn't warn you if it turns out to be a trap and he just does nothing or misses a penalty or whatnot. Who knows? I won't be getting him into my team. My way into this double game week will be through Kabori, who I've got in my team already, 4.0. So just looking at him right here, he's played... there's one match actually against West Ham where he didn't play at all. I'm hoping I'll have to look into why he didn't play then, but at least on most of those matches he's played, and I'll possibly be starting him in that match. That'll be my way into this double game week. And you've got Wilson as well. The reason I mentioned him, even though like out of all those Newcastle players, he didn't get like a haul, right? He just returned. He scored 1 goal, but if you have faith that he'll start, he'll start the next few matches, given all those easy fixtures, then I would buy him. But there's a risk there, right? It's 1 game is Wilson, 1 game is Isak. You don't know with Eddie Howe who's he gonna start, right? So yeah, I do so with like maybe just keep that caveat in mind, or maybe just have a look. Maybe the pattern seems to be that Wilson starts the Premier League games and Isak starts the Champions League games. But we don't know that for certain right now. All we know is that if he was guaranteed to start, I think he'd be a very, very good pick right now. He'd be up there with Alvarez as a very, very good forward option. But yeah, there's that thing to worry about. Is that does he start or does he not start? Because you don't want that worry. He played 24 minutes, or sorry, how many minutes did he play in the last match? Yeah, he played 69 minutes in the last match, and then I think he was subbed off possibly for Isak. So he's a good option. He's a good option with a caveat. Right, let's look. So I already talked about the transfers and the potential transfers for people whose team don't look like mine. I think what's next is we look at the preview for next week and what potential games we could look at targeting. Other than those, you've got Aston Villa versus Brighton. That's one of those games where you've got FPL assets just going against each other. It could go any way. Both very, very good teams. Could be a high-scoring match, but I'm not really sure about that. Arsenal versus Bournemouth is very, very good. If you've got Saka in your team, which I'd assume you do, that's very good. Starting an Arsenal defender here because there's that issue with which defenders do you start now. A lot of people have Spurs and Arsenal defenders in their team, and they might have benched the Arsenal defenders this week. This is a good one to start. Gabriel or Saliba or White or whoever it might be. Everton versus Luton. Calvert-Lewin, I suppose, could be someone that you could look at to score against Luton. Doucouré looked good in that last match, but Everton is someone maybe you just look at them for now from far away and just see how they do before spending money to get them in or spending a transfer to get them in. Man United Crystal Palace. Man United under deep analysis right now. That's what I'll say about them. We'll just have to see if they ever bounce back from this form that they're in, or if they ever give us something convincing to let us think that they are a good team to target. But at the same time, I think you keep their assets given that they have got 2 easy fixtures coming up. At home to Crystal Palace. Newcastle at home to Burnley. Great fixture, fantastic. I've already spoken about it. West Ham versus Sheffield United is also another good fixture. Yeah, just be wary. We did the same thing for Tottenham before. Man City versus Wolves away. Hopefully we can see the returns from Alvarez come in on this match. Everyone, I think the crazy thing is that every player who everyone targets since the beginning of the season has not done well in the week where everyone brought him in. So it was Alvarez, it was Alvarez this game week, and it was Son the week before it, and it was it was Chilwell at one point. I think everyone brought him in, and he didn't do anything. And there was Mbuemo as well, who didn't do anything when everyone brought him in. So let's see. Hopefully in the next week he makes up for it. Hopefully Alvarez can justify all the transfers that went for him this week. Spurs versus Liverpool. I see this also potentially being a high-scoring match. Spurs have been known to give Liverpool a bit of trouble, given past fixtures. I can see this. Two teams. Beautiful game. This is a game, at least even from a football lover's perspective, you would love to watch this, and I'm excited to watch this one as well. Let's see how it goes. Liverpool with the weak defense, which I've touched on earlier. So I'd be happy with having Maddison or Son in my team. Nottingham Forest versus Brentford. Not really much to say over there. We'll see what Mbuemo does. Hopefully he can do something good. Fulham versus Chelsea. Luton versus Burnley. Not really much to say there as well. Other than the double game week for Luton. And Burnley also have a double game week, but I wouldn't target any of their players. They've got they've got harder fixtures than Luton. They've got Newcastle first, whereas Luton have Everton and Burnley. So if you want to target this double game week, I wouldn't fault you for it. I think there's Kabori, who's a good option, and there's also Morris in attack for Luton. I think that covers it for this. For the preview, for captaincy options, let's have a look and see if there's anyone that we can get other than Haaland, right? So, okay. Is there anyone? Would you bank on Rashford, perhaps? Would you bank on Rashford's not really the good example here. Would you bank on Saka to do well? And not only that, but for Haaland not to do well, would you take that gamble? It's a very, very risky one. I'm not so sure about that. Arsenal can score in many different ways other than Saka. He's a really good FPL asset, but they can also score in many different ways. They've got Jesus now, who also gets a lot of good chances. Odegaard sometimes gets a goal here and there. Martinelli's injured, but the Arsenal can score in many different ways. So it could easily be a game where Arsenal win, but Saka doesn't score. So whereas with Man City, banking on Haaland not to score is really, really, really hard to do. It's a tough decision, and it's kind of not it's not really good from an FPL perspective to have this, because Haaland just seems to be an easy pick for everyone when it comes to captaincy. If there were other captaincy options, it would make the game much more open, but that's not the case at this point. I would not overthink it. I would go for Haaland right now. Son is, I could easily see Son scoring against Liverpool, but not enough for me to give him that captain badge. I would easily go with Haaland against Wolves away. Don't overthink it. Let's look at that. What are they in the league? They're 16th in the league, even if they're playing away. And City are on fire. Have they drawn or lost a single match? No, they've won every single match. So I'd bank on Haaland to score again. I'd bank on him to score 2 even. I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. That wraps it up for this video. And how long did that take me? I can't see that. Oh, I've got 43 minutes. A bit faster than last time, but I'll try to make these more concise. I hope you've got a lot of benefit from this, or I hope it's helped you out somehow. And I wish you the best of luck in the next game week. We'll talk soon. We'll talk next week.